All right, good. All right, are you hearing me now?
All right.
Yes. All right.
No,
You're
I'm
not.
still hearing
You, you should be hearing me now.
you. I hear you.
Just so. Let's
I
see.
hear at all.
Right, good. Okay.
Return 100.
All right, you should be hearing me now. You're on YouTube. What? Which one?
YouTube.
All right, you should be hearing me. Go off again. Yeah, because I just took it off because I thought he. All
All
right.
right, I'm not hearing you.
You don't hear me. Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Good. Okay. All right, partners. All right, partners. Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, quality assurance. Thank you. Everybody has to be part and parcel of this. It's just me alone, and of course we're trying to be as minimal as possible, whilst at the same time providing a quality program that could reach everybody, including, of course, as I said, the major players in the world. If we know what is happening instantaneously as far as Ukraine and Russia is concerned, and what is happening in the Middle East and between Israel and the Palestinians, and therefore the Arab, and of course the other players that may be positioning themselves for one side or the other, why not can we here in Trinidad and Tobago, we could be minimal and we could be, of course, effective. Let's get back, of course, to the current piece of music that I think is appropriate for tonight's program, and that is what? Yes, capitalism gone mad. Of course, gone mad from the perspective that is a bunch of corrupt persons, and they have no shame, they have no qualms, they have no respect, and they are so guilty and committed to crime and criminality and abuse of government office that Dr. Rowley goes up, of course, to the launching of a piece of the highway to Point Fortin, and made the most, I consider to be the most, not just insensitive, but the most callous, the most disrespectful, the most brutal political statement that anybody could make. But what it shows me, if you notice that he was sweating, and that is reminiscent of what Manning, when Manning see that all hell has broken loose and that the PNM will be no more, in other words defeated, they then of course burst into unrelenting and prolific sweat, yes, perspiration. Well, Rowley was there as he tried to convince not the audience or not us out here, but himself. That is how I say that is the level of madness that has taken over and has now saturated and infected the PNM administration from the very top. Boy, it was I mean, the man went on to say that if judges drink a babash, yeah, listen to him, I'm going to play it tomorrow, but I'm just letting you know that it was a spectacular piece of madness, and of course attempted to convince those who have already been convinced that he is incompetent, impotent, and he's a total madman and a serial criminal in terms of his sociopathic disposition. Has to be. How you looking for judgment in your favor? The tribunal in England says that OAS should get back the original contractor on the highway, $1 billion and more. But he's trying to convince us that he had nothing to do with it, and therefore some clause that he keeps focusing on, as if he is Goebbels or one of those fellas in the Nazi or the regime of Hitler, when they try, of course, to say something that is totally incongruent or anti-reality, and say it sufficiently long enough so that people could be stupefied sufficiently to go against not only their own best judgment and all of their senses, whether it's the ears, the eyes, the intellect, and or the mouths, want to go against that. And he was alone on the stage. You know what that reminds me of? Go and check it tonight after we finish, of course, because the corridor transformation, there's nothing but that in terms of the best. But the fact of the matter is that he looked exactly, and his disposition and his not only the choice of words, but also his language, his body language was similar to that when he presented those fake emails in Parliament. Check it out. I only seen that. It was like deja vu for me when that man stand up there and said that he write out a story about the misdeeds of his predecessor administration and try, of course, to castigate and malign in that environment, after the man over the 8 years have said a number of things, including indirectly, but nonetheless, nobody is stupid, commended the last administration for putting that mechanism in place so that they could have gotten back the bonds that the OAS had to set up in order to get the contract, protecting therefore the interests of the people. So, like the fake oil matter, what really caused the OAS to abandon the project? What? And that is the question that must now be answered. And it has to do with Rowley and their attitude, manifesting a position before they got into office in 2015 that OS was no good and that arrangement ought not to have been, and they went about conducting themselves so as to frustrate, as we said last night and night before, the contractor. It's not that they were bankrupt and therefore there must be Rowley fast and out of place. Rowley fast and out of place. Nobody told him, even though all of us were concerned that there was no bidding to get sandals into our space for the purpose of constructing a multi-million-dollar hotel. There was none. Nobody could have tell him anything. He fast when, of course, he tried to say that the UNC must not engage the contractor, even if it was the 4th of August, days before the 2015 general election. He fast and out of place. There was still a government in place, and they took the decision. When he took the decision and accept, of course, that there should not be an appeal, when his friend AV Drilling Company got back both the contract and money coming out of that arrangement, Rowley fast and out of place. He can't tell a government what to do. And and you would hear him talking, it should have been this and should have been that. Hold your tail, you have no moral or ethical or any kind of conscientious right, morality or position in that. You are the scum of the earth. You cannot tell another government that ought to have been who you feel he is. Well, I could tell you a number of things that ought to have been. Firstly, you ought not to have gone in Parliament with those fake pieces of paper. You ought not to be in government right now, or indeed, even then, you ought not to Rowley under the PNM, and you save no one, but you nourish yourself on the spoils of the population and the taxpayers and the treasury of the country. That is what you have done. We're telling me about. It's the most asinine, the most dotish, and of course, to bring up the rear, you had his imbecilic Minister of Works talking in a puerile and infantile. My son could talk better than that in a public forum. And if you had the nonsense, and of course, trying to rewrite history. After he said all those things I will bring the entire thing for you, because I get vexed when I saw the kind of nonsense, and of course playing to the sentiment of the people that somehow he is suddenly some impeccable individual who has no track record of raping and of course pedophilism, getting on as though he's a paragon of virtue, and that there is something that is sacrosanct about them. There is nothing sacrosanct about Rowley and that bunch of thieves. Just that waste time. Since he didn't waste any time at that forum to of course spew his bile and venom against the UNC, who he should be praising for keeping the economy of Trinidad and Tobago alive at least until this time, because they still had the very monies that they would have inherited. 10 billion in reserves, 5 in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and a bunch of hogwash that they talked, and then of course abusing luck. The luck, of course, we discussed last night with respect, of course, to the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and we played it last night for you. And tonight I will finish that. Tonight I will finish it, because these fellas must not get away with the shenanigans. You know what they're afraid? As I said today, they are cowards. They're afraid of jail. They're afraid blue lights and silver bracelets. That is why they are so desperate. I tell you, the man sweating. I'm going to play it for you tomorrow night. But I just got a irksome and a kind of excruciating video representation of what the man said at the opening of that leg of the highway, making excuses after excuses and talking incongruency and ambulatory verbalization that makes absolutely no sense. Before I go there, because I'm gonna expatiate tomorrow on the ground report, and I'm going to of course do that tomorrow night with of course all the details and accompanying evidence. But I want you to know, because they started with that it was a P&M project. I'm talking about the highway to Point Fortin, and they are correct, and that Manning of course initiated that in the Manning administration, of which he, Rowley, was a part. Whether they put him out or not is irrelevant. The fact is that he is the head of the PNM today, so therefore birds of feather flock together and they could be considered to be one. So let's not waste time with that. You can't distinguish one from the other. They can't distinguish the PNM from him and he from the PNM. The fact of the matter is that it was a Manning administration is irrelevant. What is relevant is that OAS was the only bidder for that very highway under the Manning administration, even though they did not accept that their bid was about $5 billion, and Rowley is stating that because their internal evaluators and their engineers and those who are connected to the project for its implementation on the government side, back in of course just before the 2010 elections, between 2007 and 2010, because there is a fundamental lacuna, a deliberate con job typical of Dr. Rowley to leave out essential elements to convince himself. Nobody is convinced, I agree, but we need of course to call him out to show that he will not stop. Remember the little toddler I told you about a couple of days ago, that he will see, we know it's hot water, and he will go behind that hot water and pull it down possibly on himself. But that's Rowley, and they have now collapsed collectively, intellectually, and of course they are in total cerebral decline. Because I could tell you, he said that the project started under Manning, under PNM, and they took credit for it. Nothing wrong with that. They sent out tenders, and OAS ended up being the one that became interested, and they considered it. But the price that OAS came in with was too high. Nothing wrong with that. They are the government. And if the UNC government decide to do something different, you're fast and out of place to after the fact, post facto, say that they should have done that. You have the moral authority to talk, Rowley. He's a blasted political kobo. He's a blasted political kobo. The entire PNM clan. They tell me about the government is in place. The government took a decision whether it was at the cusp of the election or not, because nothing similar to what the PNM and Rowley has done with respect, of course, to Tobago and indeed here. Why do you think they're paving all these roads? It's because he has, I'm sure, being forced, and this discussion would have been engaged, at least within the party, to call an election. It's the same thing they did as they tried to empty a third of the budget for that year in Tobago to try to soft soak and fool and deceive the people. We're telling them about you want to do it, and when you do it, it is moralistic and right. But when others do it, you have a difficulty. Well, hold your tail. Don't see in others that which is in you, or more appropriately, do not castigate others for things that you would have done and do worse. That's the first principle. I am not saying that these kinds of strategy by these politicians is morally correct and so on. I believe that if it is that there's a major decision to be made, you make it outside. But because on that occasion the PNM did not make the decision to start the highway, but there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. The man's so damn stupid. He talked everything else, that the PNM had an election coming. He and his what I consider to be his dumbbell minister of works. They're so blasted stupid, believing that people are that naive and that insensitive to what the realities were. And what the reality was that if the project went out for tendering, it means that they would have done all of their preliminary homework and so the feasibility, etc. Spectacularly, it was Rowley in trying to defend, of course, the Manning and him before 2010, and the feasibility study for the railway. Remember that alone cost $500 million, $500 million, and the look at my device and the cost, you know. When I see him today, I felt elated, and at the same time I felt abused by the level of lies that this man would tell, and of course conveniently being eclectic verbally and playing that he vex in the meeting, playing the vex, you know, semantics. But in that particular matter, what he forget and conveniently omitted was that Manning called an early election. Manning called an early election, and there would have been a reason for that. That is why they didn't have time to, of course, sign any contract with anybody. The elections that Manning had won in 2007, 3 years later, by 2010, he called an election, even though that matter went out for tender. If that wasn't the case, it means they would have had 2 years in order to implement that. So you cannot say that because he called an election, you somehow beating the chest, that you are somehow some kind of self-righteous nincompoop telling us that there is a moral position, and therefore when you're close to election, you mustn't make major decisions like that. Hold your tail. Who is trying to fool? Why didn't you say that Manning called an early elections? Because there would have been enough time to do all the things that they talked about, whether it be, of course, acquisition of property, whether it be, of course, formalizing an arrangement with a contractor, etc. And he's so blasted stupid. All of them. They're so blasted stupid on this matter. Imagine they are saying that the same OAS was would have been the preferred contractor. Let me put it more logical and common sense. OAS would have been Manning and Rowley and the preferred contractor if they had come up, according to Rowley and them, with the right figure. In other words, if they had come up with a $3 billion cost for the project, that they could do it for that price, as they claim, they estimated at at and was prepared to pay, then Rowley himself, he was there too. And what? Snail space, tautology, nincompoop, imbecilic, Sinanan. I asked you earlier, if OAS had come up with the right price, because that is what all they say, they came up with the wrong price, and that is why all they deferred or did not continue or consider them. But had they come up with the right price, who would have been the one to construct the highway to Point 14 under a PNM government? Apart from the fact that they were preempted and that their plans were emasculated by the fact that Manning had to call an early elections. And all of us know why. Because of the same pressure that Rowley is today under, because the very people who he went to undermine Manning are now, of course, have now turned against him, and that there are people within the PNM that are saying to you, Rowley, you have turned the PNM into a criminal enterprise by a set of criminals that you have recruited, and everybody washing them out on the PNM, and every night somebody calling you a blasted rapist and a pedophile, and now that they are threatening, of course, to take you to court in order, of course, to prove that they're lying about you because you rape a school child at the age of 16 for sure, as she made the child 9 months after at age 17, and you have the audacity to come and play your vex, and you're so incensed and you're so protective of the public interests and good. Hold your tail, Rowley. All of you, Sinanan, you're a total buffoon. What you all have done is put in the public domain argument that is so culpable on all your part and so self-serving on all your part that all you should hide all yourself collectively and individually in shame. Do like the ostrich probably and bury your head in the sand. But we will, of course, hunt you down and we will exact revenge. They're telling me about if OAS had come up with the right price that the PNM was willing to pay according to what they said only at the opening of that leg of the highway recently, and then who would have gotten the contract? Not OAS. You see, I am harping on that for a specific reason, because suddenly Rowley is saying now that, of course, they had a different plan. They focus like the consultative, the construction consultative committee organization that deals with, of course, construction and so on, and of course the interests of contractors. The consultative something, I can't remember the entire terminology, but certainly he referencing that and saying how them say to the UNC that local content or local contractors could manage the project. And so when he now only have local contractors do the project, that somehow that makes him absolve him and the PNM from the very thing that they are accusing the UNC of. Firstly, the UNC came in contact with OAS because of PNM. And if they had come up with the right price, the OAS alone will have gotten the contract. Let's just waste time with that. Let me repeat. It's a non-argument. It's a nonsensical. You understand my irascibility and my irateness and my total and absolute apoplectic disposition at this time. Apoplectic. Yes, I am. Because I just don't understand. These consummate nincompoops, scum of the earth, rapscallion, will come at a project like that at this time deliberately, of course, changing it in their favor by, of course, letting it start from point 14 and then fooling the point 14 people after and during, and maybe because of that they fire all of them from what I consider to be an institution that has been intrinsic, that has been an imperative, that has been a lifesaver, that have been engaged in a symbiotic relationship between the community and itself. I'm talking about Petrotrin, and have brought no solution. Everybody is saying now that that part of the country is now a ghost town, and he has the audacity to go down point and talk that hogwash. I asked them again, if OAS had come up with the right price that they said they wanted to get, which was $3 billion to do the extension of the highway back and before 2010, who would have gotten the highway alone to be constructed? So what if UNC decided that only OAS must get it, and of course they will now employ local contractors as subcontractors for different parts of the project? So what? So what? And has the audacity, and he has the belly to, of course, to talk about the corrupt interchange, and saying that it was supposed to be under the UNC, but for a bacchanal between, of course, players, operators of the UNC, that today came into office because he's justifying, of course, the presence of him, ironically, in the office of Prime Minister, a blasted rapist and a pedophile. He's justifying that and saying that it's a good thing only put us there, because the project was supposed to cost, I think, according to him on this occasion, because before it was 8 million or 800 million, sorry, 800 million, yes, but they got it down to 200 million with an extra road and all that kind of hogwash. Extra road. What he didn't say is it the same interchange that the UNC was contemplating? They studiously avoided that. Is it the same design? Because what we saw as a design, man, it was a spectacular piece of architecture, and that is how the UNC operate. They spend the money, value for money, and people appreciate. Watch at them schools that they build, as opposed to what Rowley, whether past PNM or present PNM bill. Modern day cowsheds, just a empty factory shelf kind of arrangement, and then they put classrooms and so on, and they call it a school. That is their track record. UNC not so. They do things with style. You know why I'm saying so? Is because experience is the best teacher. I'm sorry to harp on this, but I'm so angry tonight, and I want this anger to transcend even to tomorrow morning when I get on the ground report, because I'm totally upset. Haven't seen Rowley gallivant and pretend and malign, and you know that is a classic case of deja vu as far as the emails, the fake pieces of paper that he presented in the parliament. Nothing different, but this time he had plenty air condition to, of course, absorb his exhaustion or his sweat. Yeah, but there he seemed to catch a piece of dehydration. Yeah. If you see him sweating. But as I say, remind me of how desperate Manning was And he started to sweat when he realized that all gone, all gone. In this case, Manning get away. He ain't faced no penalty in terms of criminal and civil action. They know criminal and civil action in the tail. So he goes up there and hanging on to a dribble any port for a storm. And it tells me that elections is nigh. So do not be fooled by the nostalgic and of course the anachronistic tales of Rowley and his bunch of opportunistic miscreants and kleptocrats. Yeah. Rowley and them again has to tell you, if OAS, the company that he's maligning now and saying that it will have been gone bankrupt, etc., and somehow the UNC had a right to stop the contract, hold your tail. If they are satisfied as the government that what is happening in Trinidad does not is immune from what is happening at the time in Brazil, and notice he starts with a different talk now, the same talk that I was saying. No, he cannot accept the fact that the people know, so therefore he stopped talking about bankruptcy. He's saying they were under judicial consideration. When I keep saying it was bankruptcy protection, he shifts his narrative now. He shifts the goalpost as he normally would, but looking like a damn fool, like an ass in that regard. He bellowing. He frequently referring now to bankruptcy protection or under judicial consideration, and still have the belly, like how he said in the parliament that they did not infringe the constitution when they tried to preempt and prevent and usurp people's right to vote and postpone the local government election to December. Thank God for Kamala Prasad Bisasa and the UNC. Has preserved our democracy. The entire democracy would have been undermined, and therefore our constitution and our right to vote, those who we elect, and not as according to the Privy Council, not a group of persons who find themselves questionably as the executive in a country, talking about the government and the cabinet, and you go to the parliament with your tenuous majority and then of course use that to postpone an election. The Privy Council said no, that is intolerable in itself, respecting and a developing or even in its nascent stage any democracy. So Rowley has to come real good. You make yourself an ass upon an ass upon ass, and then you want to come and play self-righteous indignation and suddenly create another story, like of course the emails, and you expect people to study you. But it is my job to share it with you so that you would see and confirm solidly or more solidly the kind of rapscallion criminals that are in the office of the cabinet and therefore ministerial positions in this country. They are desperate. I am amazed as to how Rowley could come with that kind of illogical, incongruent, disjointed argument and want to convince you and I know that those sycophants and those apologists are not taking this lightly. They thought that Rowley had a case. After so many years, 10 years? After so many years, change the narrative. I am going to bring his original narrative when he accepted the fact that the UNC worked well to make sure that OAS put up bonds, and he said big, bonds of him, bonds, he emphasized bonds, and we went and get it back, and because it belonged to you, the people. Yeah, but come this week and talk a different story and put another dimension to that particular, what I consider to be anecdotal serial, because with Rowley, you never could tell. Tomorrow he might be adding something more to make it for him juicy, talking to himself. That is the classic case of a madman. He alone convincing himself. And of course, right there, self. What is hilarious? Right there, self. I'm looking for you tomorrow. I can't wait. The chairman of NITCO, the supervising government agency, then under the UNC and now under this government, but with different people, a different chairman, he said that 26% of the, when he was making his speech at the same function, Rowley in the audience, he said that 26% of the contract thereabout was taken away from OAS. And of course his argument is that when they heard that they had some financial problems by the UNC administration. But he said that the project was about 5 point something billion, and now because of the taking away of those projects, it was reduced to 4 point something billion. You know, Rowley go on when he had his chance to speak and say that they take away the 26%, but OAS was doing the remainder that they were left with for the same amount that the original contract was. This man is beyond salvaging. The man is duplicitous, he's schizophrenic, he's an ass, he's a nincompoop, and he is a rapist and a pedophile. Maybe it's that. And of course there is a Greek or Roman saying, who the gods wish to destroy, they first send them mad. He has gone mad. Right in the same function, the person who is directly connected to the project, the chairman of NITCO, says that the portion of the work, the scope of work that was taken away from OS, there was a corresponding amount of money that was taken away, reduction of the original sum, the 5 point something. Rowley go on and say that the UNC put in an adjustment to the contract where the people was gaining the same amount of money, and somehow, and he mentioned that you, the taxpayers, had to find another set of money in order to do those portions of the contract that was taken away from OAS. I mean, it is fantastic. It is unbelievable. This man is a total con man. A total con man. And not even that he is good at. I tell you, the chairman said earlier that because of the circumstances of OAS, as far as he is concerned, I am not saying that is so, but the government of the day took the decision. The government took the decision, and he's so stupid. He have a commission of inquiry to say who made the adjustment. This ass, where go nowhere. Nowhere, can't go anywhere. Just as so, of course, they try to hoodwink the population and tell the population that the evaluation commissioner sent out, of course, evaluation forms for you and I, of course, to assess our property in preparation for property tax. And then the court say, but you're a blasted scamp, you're a fraudster, government. That's what the court say in effect. And a grassroots man will understand that. You committed a fraud on the people. You deceived them by putting out that and telling them it has a penalty as well. Just as how he make, of course, our grandparents and those great grannies stand up in the rain. His son stand up outside vaccination booths where there were no vaccines at all. He had to come back and say that there was no vaccines, and generated, of course, a spike in the deaths among the senior citizens in this country who could be and ought to be alive today if he did not do that. but because he's trying to gain political fodder unmeritoriously, and trying to show that somehow he is efficacious and that he is the best thing since the devil tempted Jesus on earth. Had to be. He's the best thing since the devil tempted Jesus on earth. It's only negative around this man. And he did it. He did it under the pressure. And I'm sure that they would have released that into the public domain. They're that evil, they're that devilish. To say that people will not be the beneficiary, or they will take away their pension if they don't go and stand up in that line, and ended up, of course, creating a mass spread scenario. A mass spread scenario. That evil man. You see, the problem with Rowley, he has done so much and have so much track record of all the things that he is now trying, of course, to be somehow cleansed of. A self-cleansing. Yeah. He's attempting, of course, to wash himself, baptize himself. But let me tell him something. He could only be baptized with canal water, one. And his church, or the place of baptism, had to be in the labas. That political kobo. Political kobo. That is this ingenuous to the hilt. People, of course, let me formally say, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, or friends in Tobago, wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web. A pleasant good day to you. And of course, you can make your calls and tell me if, of course, we are being seen loud and clear, because of course we have a bumper night, and I want to make sure that we are on both YouTube and Facebook. I have a problem with the other monitor, so I'm unable to see whether or not you are on, so I rely on you. And of course, we had, of course, people call in very early to say, well, listen, I'm not hearing you, but of course, then afterward, I've seen you, but I'm hearing you now, and etc. etc. So if you can, of course, don't forget 337-6940. If you want me now, 337-6940. And if you want to call, of course, Anne-Marie for any assistance, or you want to provide some support for the program, well, of course, yes, we are still taking support, and we have Christmas coming up, and we are going to be, of course, on a campaign to provide as much hampers and toys, and of course for the vulnerable in the society. Dr. Rowley, of course, making our work more tough because of his poor policies and lies upon 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 lies. That political kobo that will, of course, see anything to anchor his so-called misfortune, not fortune, misfortune. As we move forward, 2025 must come, and we will be unrelenting, and we will be extremely aggressive and bellicose. Yes, that level of aggression must be taken to them, because they believe that somehow the people of Trinidad and Tobago must be taken for granted, and that they are stupid, and that they will not, of course, have people to, if it is a complex situation or a complex issue, that somehow they could talk the hogwash and you will gravitate, and of course their minions and their spokesperson will, of course, parrot the nonsense that they are talking. It's highly irregular, highly dotish, highly obtuse, highly inane for anybody who have a modicum of knowledge of these issues. And because the opposition doesn't respond, he feels he has a license to say anything, and of course insert his fictitious narrative. I believe that we will respond. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Lennox, good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Auntie, everybody on it. Lennox, yo, I wrote her like, I wasn't going to call you, you know, because I didn't want to disturb you.
No, your job is to this.
Break.
Yeah. Your job is to disturb. Your job is to
I
go
don't
ahead.
want to break that trend.
All right, okay, go ahead.
I
That's the
did
thing.
not want to break that trend, but you know, did it?
Yeah.
I want you to tell Lucy, right?
Yeah.
He want to know, he or she, I don't know if it's hermaphrodite or what.
Yes, right.
He can't wait. He can't wait for Rowley to sue you like how Philip Alexander got sued. But I want you to tell him, Philip Alexander's a runaway train. You are not.
That's
You
right.
bring facts.
That's right. That's right. That's what they're afraid of. It's a stubborn thing.
Yes.
It's dangerous to those who would not like it to be revealed. It's dangerous to them. Yes. Can't wait. It's ice swim. You tell them it's ice swim. And wait this week. They go hear more. They go hear more this week. By Friday, you'll hear more. Because his lawyers have not yet responded. So wait.
This is what I know what I asked you.
Yes.
Because people are inquiring what happened there. Because we know it's fun, right?
Yes.
But you run away to Canada.
Yeah. Let go. Let go.
Nations.
You can run by hide.
He can't. But I want you to Lucy. You see, Lennox, they have the impression that they police at the schoolgirls with a KFC special. But I want you to see, when doing that, they're committing statutory rape.
Of course.
Explain to Lucy, right?
Yeah.
France, between an arranged based on the 1923 Marriage Act to statutory rape now. And try to Satmarat, always on Satmarat case. But I want to know how old his mother was or his grandmother was when they had their first child and what you were called. So long ago it was arranged marriage.
Of course. And it was nestled in a religious precept that was right and legal within the Hindu dogma, and that is what makes, and therefore the state would have respected that, even though the age of maturity would have been around 18 years.
Right. But in C, Lennox, every time you talk about something like that, with Rowley, they have to bring in Samparat. There is a big difference.
Of course, by far.
Because you remember in those days they were arranged marriages.
That's right. Yeah, there were cultural issues. There were cultural issues that the law will not touch, and that was respected. Of course, today, in modern times, is a different story. But certainly in those days, it was permissible. But in the case of Rowley, he was a teacher. She was of student age. Let me use the right term. Of school age. She made the child at 17 years, and of course 9 months before that, Rowley would have been having sex with her. We don't know if it's 12 years, we don't know if it's 13 years, 14 years, but what we know is that she was around 16 for sure when she was impregnated. But more than that, let me cut this short. He could go and find out what has happened to, of course, NH International, right, owner, a friend of Rowley. He is before the court right now for interfering sexually with a 17-year-old. I done the talk. Me want no more talk. Go and find out, my friend. Done the talk.
Exactly.
Yeah, done the talk, man.
And you see what, and Lennox, what they try to do with the new marriage act, right? They try to make it look as though it was something so nasty. But that was the and what they failed to realize, Lennox, and they come down and then for the past bits of your clothes. They did not want to put in that room your clothes because things happen, Lennox. You
Yes.
understand? Because in most days, a lot of children, a lot of young girls got married at 16.
Of course.
Especially after they leave school.
Yeah.
They had no
And
secondary
it is still going on. It's still part of the cultural makeup sociologically in India. Still, even though of course the world is gravitating to a different perspective on that. They say in the early age is too, of course, advantageous and so on.
Lennox, if I'm not mistaken, it falls under the Muslim and the Baptist religion as well.
That's right. Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
yeah. But you see, they're so nasty. And according to what never been a child marriage in our country. But you see, Lennox, what they like is the care special.
No, I think no. I think it's making excuse and wanting to defend the indefensible. That is what is happening there. They are so PNM minded.
Yeah, well, I call.
Yeah. So.
I call it the KFC special.
yeah. But
Anyway.
but that come like cocophagia. Cocophagia. Yeah, they eating their own blasted filth. Yeah, cocophagia. Yes. That's it.
But Lennox,
Yes.
and you know, I listen here tonight. Rowley, the amount of words that you describe Rowley. But I wanted to take you back to something in 2017.
Okay.
I call it false delusion. On the 9th of May, in fact,
Right.
the regional corporation.
You ready to get that internet fixed, boy?
It breaking up, Lennox.
Getting it static here. Getting
Yeah.
jumping. But go ahead. I think I'm gleaning from what you're saying. Go ahead.
Okay. Speaking out of the PNM internal, Ford described Dr. Rowley as a man of integrity who likes a good bottle of Zentel, will get rid of all the worms out of the government and give this nation a good clean out, and that it needs. He compared Dr. Rowley, now hold on to your seat, he compared Dr. Rowley to leaders like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King. He said that Dr. Rowley can surely be called a man of integrity. He has been described as aggressive, brutish, and confrontational. However, these qualities will make him a strong leader in the battle for the office of Prime Minister. He said the PP government is made up of weak leaders. We have seen the damage and destruction caused by a weak leader. We are seeing it, and we as a country are suffering from it. Now, tell me, Lennox, yet still they can't tell you what damage and destruction Kamala did, right? But I'll tell you what our weak leader did.
Good.
She built over 100 schools. She built over 100 starter homes for the poor. She raised portable drinking water distribution from 18% to 72%. She built and started 9+ police stations, fire station. She built the DB campus, Hoover Children's Hospital, the Aquatic Center, the Velodrome Center, the Tennis Center. She raised pension twice. She raised the national insurance benefit twice and settled 130 wage negotiations and took VAT off of 7,000 food items. That was for democracy, trade and energy. What has the man of integrity done for this country other than build Bali's house and make the rich richer? Lennox, that alone speaks for itself.
Of course.
I'm listening to you tonight talking about that, how he lied. And that,
and he convincing himself,
Yes.
Convincing himself, he's sweating, profusely. I say, but
Because he know he lying.
they bring a bottle of water for that man, boy. They leave him there to suffocate. He was almost asphyxiated. I mean, sometimes I thought he would have choke.
That would have served him right. But Lennox, it reminded me of the time when he went to vote. That's why Fort apartment.
Yes.
And he lied about why they had to stop it. And Hazel Manning had to remind him
Yes.
that facts are a strange thing, they don't change.
Yes,
and
yes.
she told him, speak the truth about why that project was stopped. It's because Patrick Manning asked you where the $10 million gone. You see?
Yeah.
Rowley like to twist things to suit himself. But there's always the facts out there.
That's right.
Lennox, you keep it up. Keep up that steam. Let them have it here tonight and have a good one.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And just to follow up on the licentious aspect and the sexual impropriety that Rowley clearly is guilty of, I ain't wasting no time with that. Put that in all your pipe and smoke it. Can't take it? Then let me go further to say, as I've said in the past, your daughter, your son, your granddaughter, your grandson went to school and come back and say that my teacher interfered with me in the way Rowley raped this girl. I wonder what you're going to do. Blasted vipers and supporters of evil. And evil will always descend on us in such circumstance where people's morality has lost its way. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Lennox.
Good night to you.
Good night to everybody.
Yes.
Lennox, I realized something today.
Go ahead.
I realized when African people talking against the party, I have to say the party, right? I'm going to say it like that, right? The PNM. The
Yes.
PNM. Because they believe PNM is African party, right?
Yeah, somehow.
When an African person talking against the PNM, the own people end up coming and saying the UNC PNM. But we know that when them back talking the UNC, they had to get them who get them paid for that, Lennox.
That's right.
Because they had to get paid to make up lies about UNC.
Yeah, they had to parrot what these nincompoops are saying. Total rapscallions.
Lie and thief and rum. Thief
That's
and
right.
rum.
That's right.
So what happened in front of the eye, they ain't saying that.
That's right.
So they may see one who getting paid or no. They may see one who getting paid and they won't even say they get paid for that to lie, you know.
No, how they gonna say that? As opposed to me taking my own money, begging on air and so on for people to help me.
I saw them saying UNC paying you
too. Of course they would say that, but
UNC paying Andy too.
Yeah, but they have a challenge on the hand because they could put all of their spokesperson in one room and let us talk and see at the end of the day if all of them in run. Yeah, go ahead. I was making the point. They could bring all, including the ministers of government, and let's debate. Let's debate. I bet you they run as they're accustomed doing. When Heinz see me, you have to walk on the next side of the road, you know. When we're outside in the open, you walk on the next side of the road. Because what I would tell him in his ears, I can't say it here on the live. Yes, pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Yes, Lennox, pleasant good night to you and everybody on the live.
Thank you very much as well.
Your last caller.
Yes.
Hit the nail on the head, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You see it at times when you hear I and all do my live and all too. But she saying it's true. But so-called friends and then they be saying what happened. Like them in getting them pay or what?
Yes, that's what they would say.
Right, I want to part to state here, you know, here's it to talk and put it.
Go ahead.
I say, yes, I say they pay me to educate me to the truth. I say, but when we only paying, all he paying, all to be stupid. So I say, there's a difference in the payment.
Yeah.
Big difference in the payment. Them educating me while they paying me. But all they know, we paying all to stay silent and to stay stupid. So I just want to say to the last caller, you're absolutely right, because trust me, I just get it too. So guys, you lying and they said them just pay me for me to learn the truth. Thank God for Kamala for the highway to Point Forte. Thank God for Kamala for the hospital and every other thing that she contributed to Trinidad and Tobago. Locked on and listening.
Yes, indeed. And of course, they were at pains, Rowley, the Minister of Works, that what I consider to be imbecilic specimen of absolute and total nincompoopishness. Yeah, absolute. They will not, as if in a state of perpetual denial. If you know that UNC had nothing to do with the highway, why keep mentioning it at a significant function like that? Just ignore it. UNC ignoring all you with all your stupid talk about the OAS and the clause and all of that. You even have, of course, a commission of inquiry. And by the way, commission of inquiry, I mean, I tell you, I want to talk about it tomorrow, but I'm so anxious. I had to, of course, give some of the, as a prelude to what is going to happen. You think tonight is fire? Well, you will see tomorrow night is a conflagration. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But of course, they will come. Let's go straight to the lines. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Anything the other government start, the other government has to finish it. Am I right?
Yeah.
They're supposed to do the job.
Yeah. But they want to.
Yeah, and I'm supposed to be boasting what nothing with a damn, with a freaking doing. They need to be boasting, and boasting how they get some fake gun or some toy gun that I hide in the back from before. That is what thing that boast about.
It's full of rust.
Got a job to do. Yes.
I said that thing full of rust, like somebody throwing it to hide it away, and they say
a government do, and then they have to leave. The other government have to continue.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right.
Thank God come and leave thing in place for them to finish it up job, and they even finish nothing as yet.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say to do anything for 8 years. I don't think I will go on full. Put I go on full. I would also fall apart by next week. You know that, Lennox?
Yeah.
Might see a big crack in the middle, you know, just now.
Yes. All right. Yes. But I'm tempted, of course, to finish the issue about Dr. Rowley's close friend, the owner of NH International, of course, one of his Syrians friend who is before the court for a sexual offense against a 17-year-old, sexual penetration. I'm saying that against the background that in Tobago, Rowley castigated the leader of PDP, Watson Duke, because he's on a rape charge, and he said it on a platform in Tobago. He's on a rape charge. But when one examines the charge that Watson Duke is on, and the charge that Rowley has so far escaped, you know what I say? So far escaped, because there is no time bar for that no statutory of limitations for that kind of criminal dastard act. Otherwise, we don't have a civilized society. No civilized state will want to cause us to leave that over time. That is something that people must know they must not do, and there should be no time limit, as is in fact the case with this criminal charge for rape and statutory rape, whatever form it is. But the fact is that is rape. Rowley raped the little girl. But I'm saying that in the case of Watson Duke, was two adults. That's the big difference. You sycophants was two adults. Yeah, what I say was two adults. The argument that one consented and so on and so forth, I'm sure will be played out in the courts. I don't want to breach any sub judice principle, but I'm just making the point. It was two adults over 18 years. Probably a big hardback teacher. The girl had to be 15, 16. Rape, Rowley, your leaders. And Heinz can't take me for that, because when he come and he talking in nonsense and say, but you following a leader that is a rapist. He gone, you know. He gone. Can't take that. None of them could take it. And that is why I'm always, of course, very incensed, disappointed, and my condemnation will always be targeted at, of course, the women's arm of the PNM and the youth arm of the PNM for having that kind of garbage, the scum of the earth of Trinidad, in the office of Prime Minister and head of the PNM. I tell you me, after this one, dustbin of political history, dustbin for them. They're too damn stupid. And Rowley just rubbing it in, and he will take all of them down with him, because he's the kind of fella that will pick up his marbles and go when he's losing in a fair game, in a fair contest. Notice how he has conducted and influenced not only sensitive government operations, but also elections in this country. Want to have an unfair advantage and say he's a political guru? Guru with what? You mean guru with a big stone? That is what he is. Guru with a big stone. But let's not get too physical. But of course you will see that the bane, the toxicity, the existential threat to Trinidad and Tobago. Look them there. Those are members of that cabal. Look them there. So they are up, and you will see them. And when you see them on news now, you will know who they are. Whether it be Penelope Becklers, whether it be, of course, the representative for Tobago East. Yes, Webster Roy. That's the she there. Of course, everybody knows bald-headed Camille Robinson Regis. Yes, indeed. There they are. Come up. Show yourselves. Yes, and of course, the ultimate, the epitome, the quintessential conman and criminal, and of course, mafia, Rowley, and of course, Sinanan. That's the man I talked about. A total, not just continuous neophyte, but a total imbecile. Of course, and you know, Dolly, the Minister of Education, she feels she's a real Dolly, so she has no obligation. And of course, Stuart Young is, of course, up next. And of course, the man who is Dr. Rowley's sidekick. Yes, and of course, you have Amy Brown. Yes, the Minister of Foreign Affairs at this point in time. Amy Brown. And of course, you have this fella who is in the Ministry of Agriculture. He is a parliamentary secretary there. And then of course you have Manning himself, of course. Manning, should I say disgrace. And then of course you have Cummins. You don't know if he's going or coming. Cummins, that's the man. Cummins. Yes, these are the people who are leading our country. And of course, you have the former mayor of Arima. Her name slipped me now. And of course, you have the parliamentary representative for Laverton East Mova. Talking about, of course, his name too. And of course, you have the representative. He's not a representative. He's in the Senate, but of course, he's the Minister of Information. And then, of course, you have the Minister of Public Administration. The African fellow that I mentioned, representing, of course, Laverton East Mova. He is, of course, the man in the Ministry of Housing as well, doing precious nothing for the people. And of course, Alwari is up there, and of course you have Limo or Amo, the Attorney General, as well. So I thought it was important, of course, to just pause to make certain that you get a familiarization with most of the people. Of course, you have Donna Cox. That's the woman. Of course, this administration have a lot of Cox talk. You know, like we have Cockburn and Donna Cox, and then of course you have the man who is Minister of Health. His course, the Ass Singh. And then of course you have a recent donkey-headed individual called, of course, the Minister of Public Utilities. And then you have, of course, the Minister of Trade and Industry. And you have, of course, the ever-present but ever infamous dunderheaded and engaged in malapropism talking about Fitzgerald Hines. And then, of course, you have Hussein. Who is he? Who is he again? Oh, he's in the Ministry of Agriculture. And then you have, of course, the most pernicious and the equally hated individual talking about, yes, this chalky-faced individual called Imsbert, a total charlatan for as far as finances are concerned, and will tell us a story, project a story just as Rowley, that always to the detriment at the end of the day to Trinidad and Tobago. That being as it may, I thought it was important. But let's get back, of course, to the essence of the recently concluded budget, and I have some historical issues that I want to share with you. Last night, of course, we looked at Dr. Rowley's inability to, at the end of the day, sustain a lie. He always have to come back and confess. But before we do that, let's look at Imbert in a previous incarnation about the economy, and listen to what he would have said about the economy in a previous, of course, dispensation, and before COVID. Listen to him.
The economy is turning around. Madam Speaker, it has turned around.
Before COVID it turned around.
The revenue collection is up, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
The non-oil sector is growing, Madam Speaker.
as if he is in a recital.
The energy sector is booming.
That clung. Look, clunging. And he has applause.
Very much aware, Madam Speaker, that the continuing consolidation of our fiscal finances is an essential condition for achieving our objectives. Our tax and expenditure adjustments and broad-based reforms are contributing towards the establishment of this foundation. Over the medium term, we are improving tax administration and budget procedures, and we are seeking with World Bank technical assistance
Big talk.
to eliminate waste and duplication in large areas of expenditure, such as education, health, national security, and social programs.
Let's hear him again.
The economy is turning around. In fact, Madam Speaker,
It has turned around. 2019, 2018, 2019, yeah.
the revenue collection is up, Madam Speaker. The non-oil sector is growing, Madam Speaker.
Yes. This buffoo, this
The
clung.
energy sector is booming, Madam Speaker. But we are very much aware, Madam Speaker, that the continuing after the sacrifices and prudent fiscal,
Let's go again.
the economy is turning around. In fact, Madam Speaker, it has turned around.
Pressure down the road.
The revenue collection is up, Madam Speaker. The non-oil sector is growing, Madam Speaker. The energy sector is booming, Madam Speaker. After the sacrifices and prudent fiscal management, sacrifices and prudent fiscal
He didn't believe what he's saying, so he had to pause.
2.5 years, our economy is turning around, but we have to be careful.
So you have to be careful. Let's hear more of what he has to say in terms of that level of hogwash and irresponsible propaganda that is intended, of course, only for the sycophant and the gullible who wish to hold on to that evil assembly of individuals who is only capable of leading us astray and to the doldrums of economic disaster.
As I
Listen.
indicated, the economy is turning around. In fact, Madam Speaker, it has turned around. Revenue collection is up, Madam Speaker.
Listen carefully.
The oil sector is growing, Madam Speaker. The energy sector is booming, Madam Speaker.
After he say all of that, listen to him now.
And we reach a point as a country where we're into a zone now where we just can't continue to borrow money to finance what is called recurrent expenditure. Salaries and wages is recurrent expenditure. It's not productive sector. It's not capital expenditure. It doesn't create or stimulate economic activity per se. So that the point I am making is that right now we're struggling simply to pay current wages and salaries. That's the point I'm making. What is called recurrent expenditure. Salaries and wages is recurrent. So money to finance where we're into. And we reach a point as a country where we're into a zone now.
A zone.
We just can't continue to borrow money.
Into a zone. That comedian.
What is called recurrent expenditure.
Yeah.
Salaries and wages is
Yeah.
expenditure. It's not productive sector. It's not capital expenditure. It doesn't create or stimulate economic activity per se. So that the point I am making is that right now we're struggling simply to pay current wages and salaries. That's the point I'm making.
Yes, obviously, that's the point you're making, and it continues post-COVID. That was before COVID, you know, and only during the budget debate, Rowley say phantasmagorically, as if we now arrive in Trinidad, and he now come from some planet. Maybe we should talk about the sun. So clearly he wouldn't be able to get here. But the fact is that he's here. If you hear the man, that we were on our way to improving our circumstance. We were on our way, and then COVID come. But here this fella, we not in a good state of affairs, even though he said that the economy was booming and that things are nice, and that they were utilizing mainly what they met there, left by Kamala Persad-Bissessar and a more prudent administration. More prudent. Even the financing of the highway came in for some licks by Rowley. This man is absolutely and the thing about it is, when he talked about, of course, the financing, he said that they should have borrowed money. They could have go, of course, to the ADB, the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, and borrow money and so on in order to fund it. Kamala and them say, no, let's buy the bullet, and we're going to fund it out of the consolidated fund. They view that as an opportunity to thief. They view it as an opportunity to thief, and had the audacity at that function to say that they wanted to use this consolidated fund because they would have no control, nobody to monitor them, the UNC I'm talking about, in the construction. I mean, it is so far-fetched that you want to turn around and hit Rowley one clout for that duncy head statement. They want to thief money, so they decided to take it out of nearly $7 billion, you know. Take it out of the consolidated fund. When you pay your taxes, the businessmen and so on, and then they pay OAS instead of going to the IDB or some other international funding agency. And the rationale for not going is simple. Rowley and them just playing the ass. It's simple. when they came into government, the debt to GDP was 44%. When Kamala and them, in other words, left government, they left it at 44%. Very manageable. But today, it's nearly 90 to 100%. They double it, almost. So, what Kamala and them thinking was, that is common sense, because it is our children and our children's children will have to pay that 90% that Rowley and them have ballooned our debt to GDP to. It's our children and our children's children who had nothing to do with it, but they have to pay back those monies that were borrowed over the last 8 years. Understand that? Kamala and them say no, enough is enough. So they decided, of course, when they get money, their own money, tax money, they could now, of course, pay OAS. But listen to Rowley's rationale that they want a thief. That's why they wanted to construct it out of the consolidated fund. But more significantly, he said, but if the ADB or one of these financial institutions were deployed, then they couldn't thief so much because they would have monitored the project and so on. Fooling people. Because I could tell you two things. One, when they came into government, the financial arrangements, the borrowed money for the Arima Hospital, the Point 14 Hospital, and other facilities, including, of course, tennis centers and so on, were already there. And a studious search will show that it's not the same hospital. Once it is constructed under the PNM, it's not the same hospital for which budgetary allocation was made. Not the same hospital. It will be deficient of something. It's same thing with Point 14. Tell us you build a hospital, yes, but is it the same hospital for which the UNC had borrowed money for? Just as how it's not the same interchange at Kurup that the UNC budgeted for. It's not the same. It's not the same. And mind you, that kind of advice is so stereotypical of the PNM. Not that they could make anything or be as creative as the UNC and how they manage their affairs in the interest of the people. They went and looking to borrow money, and the IMF was willing to give them the money at 1% interest. 1% interest. They went and take the same money from the Chinese instead for 3%. 3%. How that is in the interest of the people? And how does that stack up or compared with what the nonsense Rowley spoke at that launch? Because if it is that they wanted to avoid scrutiny by ADB or some other financial institutions, well, it was Imbert who said when they borrowed monies at a higher rate of interest than they were offered by the IMF to borrow the same amount of money, he, Imbert, said that there would have been too much conditionalities. In other words, scrutiny, the same scrutiny. So put us to pay more and our children's children stacking up the debts, piling up the debts, because the Chinese don't scrutinize. And worse yet, when we said, well, all right, part of the loan is supposed to be the Sinopharm vaccine to be purchased as part of the arrangement of that money from the Chinese. You know what? They told us it was what? It was subjected to what? Yes, you're right. You're right. It was subjected to non-disclosure agreement, non-disclosure clause. They cannot tell the population how much we are paying for vaccine, but Guyana could, and every other country that we looked at in the world could, but not Trinidad. But he goes up to the opening of that highway and telling us that the UNC, the reason why they didn't take a loan to, of course, construct the highway was because they wanted to thief. And they were afraid of scrutiny by international agencies that would lend them money and still, of course, look to scrutinize them. Who are you trying to fool? Who are you trying to fool? But let's hear Rowley confess. Once again, I think we played it last night, but it needs to be regurgitated, because you see, as the Greek, I always say, who the gods wish to destroy, the first and them mad. So for the 2024 budget, he boasted, but can't prove to us, cannot tell us how the money came, how we got this windfall, how you was able to contribute to the Heritage and Celebration Fund and still reduce, of course, the deficit for 2023. How you did it? Where the money come from? Can't say. But only bellowing out a good report from the IMF and other agencies, and they have a right so to do because the circumstance is such. But where the hell you have to account to us because we are not getting employed? Where is the investment? Where the investment came from? What are the businesses that were developed? What are the non-oil as opposed to the oil and gas and petrochemical areas, the commanding heights of the economy for the time being? Where are the improved jobs? Where are the increased jobs? Why it is that young people can't get work? Why it is, of course, that they are leaving school earlier or leaving school all together? And why are they joining gangs and, of course, piling up the murder rate and, of course, contributing, of course, to the shambolic inevitability of a failed state scenario if, of course, people like them remain in office? But they are so foolish in an attempt to boast, but for a different reason. You see, it is nothing different to when Rowley said that he could do more with less. But when the public servants, when he first came into office in 2015, started march wrong his office, he then say that is an impossible equation, doing more with less. He said that, and then, of course, say and tell them in his first maybe public bellicose and aggression against the workers fighting for their own survival and their own money that they work for, he tell them, listen, you could get the money but lost your work. That is this despicable man whose job it is to take care of all of us, including, of course, the security. That's what he did. Well, no difference now. No difference now. So, Imbert on the one hand is saying that we, because of prudent management, we were able, of course, to do this and do that. Rowley on the other hand told us, well, listen, because of the Ukraine and Russian war, we get $8 billion just so because we didn't increase the amount of barrel, even in those circumstances. But we are wary that if this situation, or maybe he praying that Ukraine continue, of course, to fight, of course, Russia, so that the situation with oil and gas and petrochemical could remain the same, so that they could get our money. But just in case, because he anticipated it wouldn't last, he Rowley. So guess what? Property tax in your tail, increase, of course, in electricity rates and water rates to compensate just in case. That is what we have. And this madman called Imbert telling us that prudent management has caused him to put more money in the additional money in the Heritage and Service Fund, and that itself was plodded and prodded and, of course, insisted by the UNC, by the opposition. They're trying to take them to court if they did not do it, because there is an arrangement that if it is that oil prices go above what you budgeted for, then the excess must go into that fund, and that is how he was forced to put it in the fund. Otherwise, he wasn't He didn't care about our interests. He cared about the 1% and those persons who could get big contracts and take that money out of the system and do what the hell they want, whilst they get kickbacks and of course build Balize House in the process. That is what they are on. Is a set of con men and criminals. Understand that. But let's go straight to Rowley and you will appreciate the reality and where that money come from. Nothing to do with improving the circumstances of the country. There's no foreign direct investment, nothing like that. The so-called, of course, diversification of the economy and of course focusing on, of course, on the creative sector and the tourism, etc. They have killed that. Eric William killed that since back when the oil embargo in the 1970s came, and we had, of course, a boom in oil prices. Equilibrium killed that. Yeah. But let's hear Rowley confess. Let's hear Rowley confession.
Circumstances beyond our control.
Circumstances beyond your control. First thing first, beline what Imbert just told us, that prudent management. Listen.
Because of the unusually high oil price and some improvement in the gas price, we are going to get a bit more money than we had budgeted for. So, circumstances beyond our control.
Should I read something?
Some good news. The Minister of Finance reported that because of the unusually high oil price and some improvement in the gas price, we are going to get a bit more money than we had budgeted for. Had we not got that increase, that unusual increase because of the Ukraine war, if we wanted to do those very same things, we would have had to go and borrow another 3.1 billion. And since the budget...
So it was never the intention to move from the 2% for the public servants. It's because of that Ukraine-Russian war. All your public servants lucky, and they're not seeing it being sustained. So some point in time in the future, what they're saying is that they could take it back. That's what they're saying. And don't tell me you don't know that and you don't have that experience, that these people have no respect for law, principle, and of course commitment to a promise. Only know that whether it be at the Hyatt, when Rowley said they will never touch property tax, they will never touch, of course, the subsidies, and Manning, of course, converting, of course, the people right to a pension, to a grant, so you could pull it back anytime. That is how mad they are, and they believe that is good governance. Being dishonest, disrespectful, and conman and woman to the people, totally dishonest and dishonorable, and they should be disgraced out of office. So listen to him.
Had already got a deficit of 9.1 billion in it. If we had gone and borrowed that 3 billion that we appropriated last week, the budget for 2022 would have had a deficit of $12 billion.
Doom and gloom talk.
$12,000 million.
Gloom and doom. They ain't want to pay the public servants.
Those are the realities of our circumstance. We all know that what's happening in Ukraine could be temporary. More than likely, it is going to be temporary. Because the war in Ukraine, has pushed out of the market the largest exporter of oil and probably the largest exporter of gas, one of the largest exporters of gas. It is the Ukraine war that pushed the Russian supply out of the market. If anything happens out there that caused that situation to change, the war in Ukraine, then that pressure for the high price is gone and oil price will fall. That's simple logic. If tomorrow tomorrow the Russians decide to stop the war, the pressure on the pushing up of the oil price will be relieved. So we are in a very temporary situation, driven solely because the Russian supplies have been pushed out of the market as a penalty for the Russian behavior at Ukraine.
And we were telling you that on this program and the ground report all the time. Why all you wouldn't listen? Well, sorry. I'm being presumptuous. I know that you are, but I need to get a little bit of comic relief, so to speak. But of course, we can verify, as the Rowley is now doing. Let's continue and hear him through.
The war in Ukraine, we have no control over that. It is we who said that Russian supplies have been pushed out of the market as a penalty for the Russian behavior at Ukraine. The war in Ukraine, we have no control over that. It is we who said that we will not go to the IMF. We will stay here in this country and prescribe our...
Let me tell you something. And all that talking, you notice he just said, let's be logical and apply our common sense. He just said that if it wasn't for the war and therefore that windfall, they would have had to go and borrow. Not so? Right. So the war came and stopped the borrowing. So let us, for a moment, say that there was no war. What do you think would have happened? Because he put into the equation, the discussion, going or not going to the IMF. So can't we not, based on the elimination of the fact that in our assumption now, we are being hypothetical, assuming that there was no Ukraine-Russian war and he had to go and borrow. Is it not that it is reasonable to think that they were going to the IMF? Because there was no, in our scenario, and based on what he would have said, there would have been no Ukraine war, and therefore no additional $8 billion to just so come into the coffers based on the production that we currently have and cannot increase and even take advantage of what is happening as a consequence of on the market, that is, and for the increase in a barrel of oil consequential of the Ukraine-Russian war is obvious. So he was going straight to the blasted IMF. Otherwise, don't make that statement. What make that statement for? To try to do what? Any other reasoning for that is that he's trying, of course, to say that somehow he is generous to us and that we're lucky and that, of course, he did something for us, but contemplating at the same time telling us that he would have gone to the IMF if, of course, the Ukraine war did not, because he didn't have the money according to him. But on the other hand, his words is telling us that, listen, our prudent management of the resources of the country caused us to be in this position today. I mean, what kind of duplicitous behavior is this? And what kind of contradictory message that is being sent? Something like what happened at the launch of the opening of that highway segment to or between San Fernando and Point 14. Rowley is saying that of course the part of the contract that was taken away from OAS did not come with it a reduction in the amount of money that was to be paid to OAS. But the chairman of NIDCO says something totally opposite, that the money was taken out and that therefore OAS was not entitled or did not get or could not have gotten that money. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Last good night again.
Yes, good night to you.
Because I think from my mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is not about Rowley.
Yeah.
Last, I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
If me and you was friends, right, and we commented on the live, right?
Yes.
Me and you was friends.
Yeah.
And let me say Barry Bojan who one of them PNM money life say insulted thing about you.
Yeah.
And I laugh when they put that. And I laughing at you, Lennox.
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you, Lennox.
Yes, that's all. You're laughing at them. Yes, of course. There could be none. There could be none as blind as he or she who refuses to see, especially when they have 20/20 vision. You applying that analogy to that scenario, it simply means that he's attempting, of course, to ignore something that is right in his face. So common sense make before book, and everybody would have known that he recognized that is in fact so. So let's go straight, of course, to completing Rowley's confession as to how Imbert get that money to pay and would not have paid or would not have improved the circumstances as far as the meeting the 4% is concerned for public servants. Just call election and get the hell out. That's all you have to do, and let the incoming administration treat with that. Obviously the UNC, and they have been there before, and they have dealt with, of course, numerous settlements, but instead he complaining as he come in. He said they leave it for us, and notwithstanding the fact that, of course, the OWTU got 14% under Kamala Prasad Bisasa and refused it to get 10% under Rowley, and then he gave them 5 and closed down the operation afterwards. That is the level of conmanship that we have, and Roger and them cannot bring themselves to fathom to the consciousness of the toxicity and the destructive nature of Rowley and his bunch of kleptocrats.
Own medicine, having spent $3 billion of the $4 billion already. The war is grinding to a halt, or it's traveled for a little while longer, we don't know.
Yeah.
The war in Ukraine, of the 4.2 billion.
You will say the man saying that the war is grinding down, so therefore he making a case for property tax, for selling lake asphalt, for the port, etc. Understand? So let us expeditiously, preferably, but we have no problem either if he goes until 2025, because revenge will be sweeter, as they will have to face criminal and civil action for their misdeed, mismanagement, kleptocratic behavior, and misbehavior in public office against multiple laws in this country of a criminal nature. That's what he's saying. Expect more pressure if the war between Ukraine and so on between Ukraine and Russia does not provide a continuation of the high prices of a barrel of oil that he has not been able to increase in terms of an actual barrel, because all the promises made that they will be more effective and more efficient, and therefore they could focus, that is to say, Heritage, the oil company that was created as a result of closing down Petrotrin, he's saying that they would be more effective, etc., and cannot take advantage of the hike in prices by increasing, I think it's about 40,000 barrels a day, I think that they are producing. They cannot go up to 45 or 50 barrels in order, of course, to take advantage of the high prices at this time. I mean, it is pathetic. And all you don't know that these fellas are so toxic and so poisonous that nothing they say is a lame duck government. It is a moribund government. It is a government that's shamed to lie down and will not lie down, because they are saturated and pregnant with, of course, evildoers and schemers and corrupt individuals. Rowley has done that. He has turned the PNM into a criminal enterprise. So don't waste time with that.
We spent 3.1 already. Let's say we have 1 left. The back pay at 4% would be 1.45 billion. You know what that means? We have to go and borrow $450 million to pay that back pay.
Yeah, setting all up
The government
for a horrendous future. Get rid of them.
Like that. But you must know that if we do that,
Yeah,
we're going to have to go and borrow the money. And if we do that,
but he ain't going IMF.
this scale in this way, and the oil price, gas price change, we are leaping in the dark.
Yeah, no solution. What you're doing with a man like that at the helm of our affairs at this crucial stage of our development, especially when you have a nincompoop as a Minister of Finance telling us this hogwash, giving us a dream. I mean, it is a case of a very complex and consummate and collective psychological condition that seem to suggest that all of them are infected with only delusion and illusion. Psychosis.
As I indicated,
Listen to the psycho. Listen to the psycho.
it's turning around. In fact, Madam Speaker, it has turned around. The revenue collection is up, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
The non-oil sector is growing, Madam Speaker. The energy sector is booming, Madam Speaker.
And afterwards, he would say this.
As a country where we're into a zone now where we just can't continue to borrow money to finance what is called recurrent expenditure. Salaries and wages is recurrent expenditure. It's not productive sector. It's not capital expenditure. Doesn't create or stimulate economic activity per se. So that the point I am making is that right now we're struggling simply to pay current wages and salaries. That's the point I'm making.
Yes, indeed. But people, I think we have come to the end, and I think the appropriate climax of tonight's program, of course we will focus on OS tomorrow, is this.
Captain, this ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we gas tank almost empty, no electricity. We oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it and perish slow? SOS, SOS, mayday, mayday, mayday. Help! The Trinidad, a luxury liner, sailing the Caribbean Sea. Me blood crawl, things start to fall. Hold me head when I sail a ball. Captain, this ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes. We gas tank almost empty, no electricity. We oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it and perish slow? We don't know, we don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Whoa, whoa. Now there's a lot of fingers pointing, suspicion running strong. Who's to be blamed for all her failures? Who's to be blamed for doing her wrong? Now please remember I'm warning you. For 30 years she had the same crew who hold the keys to her vault. So we know who's at fault. Now it's up to you, it's up to me to make her worthy to go back to sea. Captain, this ship is sinking.
Yes, people, of course, Trinidad and Tobago is sinking, has not yet sunk, but we have the saving grace of the leader of the opposition, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, and the UNC, and you and I, who will work to the hilt to save Trinidad and Tobago. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. I see a number of persons are there. Of course, Inshan is there, of course, who again, I'm seeing it on YouTube. However, I only have the YouTube here tonight. And the other system, as I said, seem to have a connection problem. But of course, we have Gandalal, of course. Same to you, my friend. Of course, Vidya is here. Of course, we have, of course, who again? We have Gandalal, yes, and he seemed to be making the rounds. Of course, Nadira is there as well. We have, of course, Valerie is there as well. We have who again? We have Uncle Breeze is there as well. Yes, indeed. I hope that you are not as sweaty as I am at this stage, but of course, I suppose it depends on the level of exertion that you would put in from time to time. Yes, indeed, of course. So again, we have just one more. We'll take. I don't have anything on Facebook. The system. We have to check on that. But from time to time, these things are not solid. From time to time, it will go wrong, and it will at the worst possible time. But I'm sure that you would be appreciative that when we do get it right, it is perfect. And of course, like tonight, even though it is not absolute, but certainly quite a lot of information shared. That being as it may, of course, have a wonderful rest of the night, and God bless.
We gas tank almost empty, no electricity. We oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it and perish slow? SOS, SOS, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Help! Help! The Trinidad, a luxury liner, sailing the Caribbean Sea. Me blood crawl, things start to fall. Hold me head when I sail a ball. Captain, this ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we gas tank almost empty, no electricity. We oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it and perish slow? We don't know, we don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Whoa, whoa. Now there's a lot of fingers pointing, suspicion running strong. Who's to be blamed for all her failures? Who's to be blamed for doing her wrong? Now please remember I'm warning you, for 30 years she had the same crew who hold the keys to her vault, so we know who's at fault. Now it's up to you, it's up to me to make her worthy to go back to sea. Captain, this ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we gas tank almost empty, no electricity. We oil pressure reading low. Shall we abandon ship, or shall we stay on it and perish slow? Captain, this ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we gas tank almost.
Or some kind of petty bourgeoisie, anytime you live in here, in this country, you got to be in skullduggery, making you money illicitly, to live like somebody in this country. It's outrageous and insane, them crazy prices in Port of Spain, and like the merchants going off their brain, and the working man like the only toiling in vain. Where you ever hear television for 7,000, what a million for living peace and land. A pair of sneakers, 200 1,000 for motor cars. At last, here in Trinidad, we see capitalism gone mad. It's sad and getting more bad because capitalism gone mad. Provide for your family today on your present salary is an impossibility in this country. So many bills to pay, there is no conceivable way to save for a rainy day in this country. Avariciousness, to be precise, is why every damn thing so overpriced. Big business making everybody feel government medium, I open license to steal. Would you believe me? What?